name is William J. Koetje, and I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
All right. And we're here today to do an interview for the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project.
Okay.
Simple enough. All right. Now, Mr. Koetje, can you begin by giving us some background on yourself, to start with where and when were you born?
Okay, I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I stayed in Kalamazoo, Michigan until I went in the service.
All right. Now, what year were you born?
1921.
Okay.
I was born December 18, 1921.
All right. Now, what did your family do for a living?
My father?
Mm-hmm.
My father worked in a paper mill. My mother was a housewife.
Okay. And how many kids were in your family?
5 of us children. I was the oldest of 5.
All right. Now, how long did you stay in school?
I went through high school. Then after I got out of the service, I went to a year of college. So.
Okay. Now, what year did you finish high school?
Wow. Let's see.
Maybe 1940, maybe?
I mean, around there, either 39 or 40, I forget. Well, I guess I was a 40 year.
Right.
Because I was born in December and I had to go longer to school than the rest of them.
All right. Now, once you graduated from high school, what did you do then?
I worked in a grocery store. I worked for Kroger Company and doing, putting up potatoes and stuff like that and cleaning up for them and stuff like that. Right. And then graduated, I was clerk and so forth like that.
Now, did you still live in your parents' house then?
I lived with my parents then, yes.
All right. Now, before Pearl Harbor happened, were you paying very much attention to what was going on in the world? You know, there was a war in Europe and all that stuff.
Yes, I was. Well, I'll tell you, my military service started in 1938. I mean, yeah, 38, I think, 37, 38. I was in, got into the CMTC.
And what was that?
That was Civilian Military Training Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was put up, I mean, the people of Michigan, or the rich people, got this going because during World War II, their sons were just drafted in and shot right up the front line. It was cannon fodder, they called it. So they had this deal, and the government put it up, and we was trained by regular soldiers, regular Army officers. I was at it it's Camp Butler, Camp Custer, mm-hmm. Fort Custer now.
Right.
And for 10 weeks, get out of school one day, right out to Fort Custer, and started training. Okay. We didn't get paid. We got all our uniforms and everything like that. We were regular military life.
Okay. So you learned drill and discipline and some things like that?
Drill and discipline. I drilled in the morning. Mostly mornings. We drilled all the morning and do stuff like that, doing through all the paraphernalia they wanted us to do. Afternoon, we were set in classwork.
Well, what kind of classwork would you do there?
All right, but first started out military regulations. And they had a booklet there, and they still had that when I went in the service yet, too. There's probably still one. And we had to learn military regulations. What I was expected to do, what they expected to do, what I could do, what I couldn't do, how the military operated, and so forth like that. All the graduations down from the big general down to the smallest private and so forth.
Right. Now, as you were getting this kind of training, was there an expectation that you might join the Army when you were done or when you graduated from school, or was it just a way to
I'll tell you the story. All right. The deal was we were supposed to go in there and go 4 summers. Then we'd graduate from that, and then we'd automatically become a 2nd lieutenant if we graduated from it. And then we had to spend 16 years either in regular service or reserves. So, but the war started, and the draft started, and that eliminated that entirely. Mm-hmm. So I had a little initiation to military life before I got in the Army.
Right. Now, were you expecting, say in 1940 or so, that we were going to get into a war?
Oh yes, I mean there was all around us, well, Hitler was taking Poland, Hitler was taking this country, and Hitler was doing this, and we knew in our own selves, I mean, even if it wasn't publicized, that we'd eventually get into it. So.
All right. Now, had you given any thought to actually enlisting in the military, or did you think you'd just wait for them to get you?
Well, I took it, well, I enlisted in the Marines in 1942 before, well, no, 1941 was it? No, December 41. 1942, the first part of, and I went in there and they rejected me on my feet. They said I'd had 2 high arches and stuff like that. It was really picky-ony at that time.
Yeah, I think they changed that later, at least that part of it.
Yeah.
But your first, so you were like a lot of guys, after Pearl Harbor, you tried to go sign up.
Yeah.
All right. And then how much longer after that was it that you got your draft notice?
30 days.
Okay. Not so long at all.
No.
All right.
No.
Now, did you have to report right away, or do you wait a while first?
No, I mean, they sent a notice out and said you had 2 weeks to get your things in order and stuff like that. So, and then I went right in there from there to Fort Custer out there.
Right.
And was inducted into the service.
Now, did you do anything at Fort Custer, like take tests or get shots or things like that?
No, I had to take my IQ test. Well, then they started a series of tests. I mean, I don't know if they did some shots or something like that. But they put us on trains. They didn't have enough uniforms to give us at that time, so we had to wear our civilian's clothes. We went on train down to Fort McClellan, Alabama.
All right. Now, do you remember anything about that train trip?
Oh, I remember it was a hot. The farther south we went, the hotter it got.
Right.
And I remember that. I mean, but not much more than that. I mean, I remember we stopped in every little burg there was along the way because we didn't have priority on the lines.
Did you get off the train at all, or did you just stay on the train?
Stayed on the train. I don't know, 1 or 2 days, 2 days at least, I think. But
yeah,
no.
It could take a while if you didn't have priority.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what was Camp McClellan like?
Camp McClellan was it was a nice place. I mean, they didn't have regular barracks there. They had what they called tar paper shacks, huts, and so many people, so many men in huts and stuff like that. So, I'll tell you a few stories about that.
All right.
I got down there and I'm sitting on the curb, and there's a bunch of all of us sitting there because in the civilian clothes was lining up to get our uniforms and stuff like that. And it was right outside the captain's office. And this big guy, I mean, he was from Bay City, a sort of bully. And he was pestering us all the time. He'd come along and step on us and pinch us, you know, with his foot like that on the curb. And I told him to do it a couple more times. And I says, I'm going to cold cock you. And he laughed and he did it again. And I come right off the ground and hit him, knocked him for a loop. And I was right on him. And I was pounding him, boy. And so the captain seen it, and he come flying out there and grabbed me. And this started my deal in military deal. And he grabbed me and stood me up there in his arm length like that. And I says, Captain, take your hands off of me. And he looked at me sort of funny. And he says, what'd you say? You take your hands off me, Captain. You can give me orders, but you're an officer in the United States Army. You cannot manhandle your men. He looked at me sort of funny. He said, I'll talk to you later. And so I had to go, and I got my clothes and stuff and gear, and I went in and made my bed up and stuff like that. And I knew how to hang my clothes and do everything. And then they told some of the people in charge there said, well, he had military training before. So I had to go and talk to the captain about that. And he says, where did you get that deal where you told me to take your hands off? And he says, I says, well, Army regulations tells you that. He says, where'd you learn that? I said, out of the handbook. And I said, I wasn't going to cooperate with him too much. He said, where'd you have military service? I said, sir, you have my records from the day I was born to right up this minute. I says, when the day you ship me out of here, I'll tell you. And so that put me in sort of a spot. I mean, I was sort of envied by a lot of the people there because I was a head and shoulders above them all, and they're in the non-coms too. I mean, they're sergeant and corporals and stuff like that. I'd had more military training than they had.
All right.
So, but then they shipped me out of there.
Well, did you get any kind of punishment for that? I mean,
No.
No KP or things
No,
like that
no,
for
no.
standing up to the captain? Yeah.
No, I know.
All right.
I mean, he didn't have nothing to stand on.
Okay.
If he would have said something, I could have held him.
Right.
For grabbing a hold of me.
Right. Okay. Now, did you spend, what, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like
I
that?
spent 6 weeks, I think, was basic training then.
Now, because you knew a lot of the drill and so forth already, I mean,
Yeah.
that you said that put you ahead of things. Now, did they put you in charge of a squad or anything like that?
Oh, they tried to all the time, you know. Then when they were time to come to ship out, then they said, would I volunteer to stay there as a cadre? And I said, no, I made too many enemies with your cadre that you got here.
Right.
I says, so I don't care to fight that all the time. So they sent me to Benning, Georgia, the 101st Airborne.
Okay. Now, did you ask to be assigned to the 101st Airborne?
No,
or how
they
did that
asked me
happen?
when I wanted to be. They kept asking us different questions when they wanted to ship us out, where they wanted to go, if you like to go here or there. And I said, I'd like to get in the Air Corps. But that's the closest thing they could get.
Yeah. Not Air Corps, you got Airborne
Not
instead.
airborne.
Yeah. All right.
And so I was there, and I was only 20 years old. I didn't have my parents' consent. But I was going through the regular, when I was about 3 weeks. I went through all their trainings and stuff like that, and I jumped off in their big old derrick down that chutes and stuff.
Can you describe that a little bit? How were they training you to make
first,
jumps?
Make jumps?
Yeah.
Well, first we started out in the airborne. I didn't walk. You didn't walk no place. You run to chow, you run to back for it, you run to formations, in formations, you run and so forth like that just to get you hardened up to it.
Right.
And then start calisthenics, push-ups, 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 because you got to have awful powerful arms when you're in the paratroopers, because you got to pull your suspension lines down. And so that's why they trained us that way, and it was just a constant. They weren't rough on us, but there was rough training. That's all there was to it. I mean, and they kept after us, and then I had to go and start learning to pack your own chutes. And so I did that, and we went through that. And then I was ready to go, so the next morning I packed my own chute, and the next morning they picked us up and took us out on the line by the airport. And I was sitting there and had my chute strapped on me and everything. And the Jeep drove up and hollered my name out. I said, yep. He says, get in the Jeep right now. I said, no, I'm going to make this jump. No, you're not. And he says, the old man wants to see you right away. And I said, okay. So I head back to the headquarters there, and there was a colonel that was sitting there. I had to report to him. And I reported to him, and he didn't even lift his head. He says, how old are you, Koetje? And I says, the jig's up, sir. He says, what? I said, I asked you how old you are, and I said, I'm 20 years old. He said, I know. He said, boy, and he says, I'm so glad that you didn't make that jump.
Now, why was it an issue that you were 20 years old?
You had to be 20 years old and volunteer for the paratroopers at that time. Those were regulations. So.
All right. Well, you had to be, you had been willing to be assigned to the paratroopers, so you volunteered in a sense.
Yeah, volunteered.
But you had to be 21 years old, though, to qualify?
20. 21 years old.
Okay.
And our parents' consent.
All right.
So I was still 20 years old, so I just...
Okay. So what did they do with you at that point?
They told me to go to to barracks, and he said, no more formations and nothing for you. He said, we don't want you to get banged up or any more exercises and all like that. And I did that for about 3 or 4 days, and then they packed me up and sent me out to Butner, North Carolina, where I joined the 78th Division, Infantry Division.
Mm-hmm. And then what role did you have with them?
Well, I was the first, they had a cadre there, that was all. And that was just activating that division. I was the first soldier in there for them. And so we just waited around and did different detail work and stuff like that, until the troops, they got troops in slowly. Then we started our training.
Now, were you still a private at that point?
Still a private. That's one thing I had against the Army. They're the poorest paying people in the world. And all they wanted was acting gadgets. So right as after theirs, a month or so, they give you a band with 3 stripes on it, and you said you're an acting gadget. That's nice. I mean, you act as a sergeant, you have to do the duties as a sergeant, you have to do everything like that. Excuse me. But you don't get any pay.
You don't get paid as a sergeant.
That's what burned me up. I mean, and finally they said, okay, we'll make you a PVC, and then they finally, after a while, about 6, 8 months, they said, okay, we'll make you corporal. But it was so tight with handing out ranks of any source.
Right.
And that sort of got a lot of us guys, but I put up with it.
Right. Now, how long did they have you there in North Carolina?
I was there, let's see, I think I shipped out in October, and I went there. I went in the Army in September, August and September. I was in basic training in October. About the 1st of November, I went to Butner, North Carolina. That if I can recall, I don't know exact dates.
Right, so that's November 42 then, so that's
Yep.
still in your first year in the service.
First year service there. Then I stayed there until about October, or maybe something like that, last September, October, and shipped up to Fort Meade, Maryland.
All right, so you spent nearly a year then with the 78th Division training there like that.
Yeah.
What was life like for you at that time? How did you spend your time, or what were you doing?
So, well, I was accustomed to how to live in military life already. I mean, from the training I had before, so this didn't bother me. I wasn't homesick, and I wasn't anxious about things and stuff like that. I just went along with the flow. But what got me, I mean, they treated us like little kids because you couldn't get a pass to do this and all this kind of stuff, the petty stuff.
Now, were you able to get off the base and go into town or things like that?
Yeah, I was a little smarter, so. Okay, I wasn't always a good boy. I'll tell you the truth about it. I'd stand there, and then I had, acting gadget, and I had to pull charge of quarters and stuff like that. So on the charge of quarters on the weekend, every once in a while I had to pull my turn, and the passbook was sitting there, laying there. And the captain had stamped all his names on it, went right through and stuff like that. All they had to do is put my name in there and write a date in there. So I takes about 7 or 10, 12, 14 of those passes, sticks them in my pocket. When I wanted to go to town and I knew the coast was all clear, I didn't have any duty or anything, I'd make out my pass and go to town.
Now, what was there to do in town?
Well, all right. While I was there, Reverend Vanderkeef from Christian Reformed Church come there to set up a service home for soldiers from Grant, or anybody in the Christian Reformed Church. So he set up, and first he set up a little town of Creedmoor outside of Butner, and a trailer camp, and we got a few of the guys together and so forth like that. Then he moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and he got a big home there. He rented a big home with 4 or 5 bedrooms in it and stuff like that. And that's where we'd go. I'd spend a lot of weekends there. And so, and while I was there, I mean, I was going every weekend, because if I didn't have a duty to do, I'd go. So we called him Doc, I mean, the picture. And one day, I'd been there about 4 or 5 weekends in a row. He called me in his office and he says, "You got a pass, Bill?" I said, "Yeah, I got a pass." I took it out and showed it to him. "How you do?" He said, "Well, I can't figure out why these other guys can't get passes and come as often as you do." I didn't say nothing to him. He says, "You got an explanation?" I says, "I'll just tell you one thing, because I don't want nobody else to know what I'm doing." I said, "They did build fences big enough to keep me in." And he says, "That's all you can tell me?" I said, "That's it."
All right.
And so, we had a lot of fun on them weekends down there and stuff like that. With a lot of other boys.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them pictures out there is of all guys from Kalamazoo, 2 of us from Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Holland, Zeeland, and so forth like that.
Yeah. Now, did you go back home to Michigan at all before they shipped you overseas?
Oh, yes. Well, I got one furlough. I mean, they gave us, the first year I was in down there in Butler, North Carolina, they come along there and said, so many guys could go on Christmas and so many for New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got the Christmas deal and I went home then. But after I shipped out of Butler, I went up to Fort Meade, Maryland, and I had a gravy train there. So,
Can you explain what you mean by that?
okay. I was made a sergeant right after I got there. And I was on to the ground forces, Army Ground Forces, Special Services. And I was assigned to a D82. There's a Repo Depot number 1, they called it. All we did was process troops and send them overseas. We get troops in, I mean, they'd come shipping them from all camps and, and forts and stuff around there. And I got 80 men in my barracks, and I was assigned to 80 men to process them, to get them ready to go overseas in 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. And then after a while, I mean, I soon got onto that. And I had a regular routine. I set it all up for the guys that was under me, and we could process those guys pretty quick.
Okay. Now, how long did you do that kind of work?
Oh, almost just about a year. I was at Fort Meade, Maryland. I was lucky. I stayed in the States over 2 years.
Okay. So you were still there then when things like the Normandy landings happened in June
Oh,
of
yes.
44?
I was there in July. I was there, and we heard about it and stuff like that. And I can tell you other things that happened at Fort Meade, Maryland. I mean, it just isn't handling soldiers. I mean, you're handling soldiers that knew they was going into war and to combat and stuff like this. Men change. Their characters change. Their attitudes change. You know, they're worried, stuff like that. I was too. I went overseas. I mean, I wasn't any different than they were.
Right. Well,
So,
how would that affect their behavior if they got worried or upset?
well, that just a few of the things. I mean, I was down and I was right after supper. I was just about, right after supper one night, and we was in the barracks, and I was in my room, and all of a sudden that upstairs comes. Everybody upstairs just cleared out, come thundering down the steps and running up to my room, and Sarge. I said, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" The guy up there has got a pistol and said he'd shoot anybody come out there. Hokey pokey. Now what? I says, okay. I thought a few minutes, and I said, okay. I don't want nobody else to go upstairs. I'm going up alone. I says, because if he's going to do any shooting, I don't want half a dozen of you guys get hit. I said, you stay down here. So I walked upstairs, and he was down the other end of the barracks, naturally. And he had crawled in bed and covered up. And I walked up to him, and I knew his name. And I said, Wilson, give me that pistol, the butt first. And he grumbled something, stuff like that. Well, then I took a real deep, harsh voice, like an old sergeant giving orders. And I told him again, there's no bunk about it. I want that pistol, butt first. And finally, the blanket went back, and I, well, watch out. I was on guard for it all the way around. I was going to jump him otherwise. And he finally handed me the pistol. And I said, okay. I flipped up. There was a round in the chamber, too, so I flipped that out of there right away. And I took it in my hand, and I says, come on, we're going out now. Took him over to the order right over there, and I told them, they had telephones, and I says, call hospital up there and get an ambulance down here. We got to take this guy in. So they did, and the ambulance come, and the guys, the ambulance is going to put him in, and that guy had more arms and legs than you could shake a stick at. They couldn't get him in the ambulance. Boy, that 2 big husky guys too. And finally he said, well, I'll go if Sergeant Koetje goes. And I said, all right, come on, get in. And he walked right in the ambulance, and we went up to the hospital there, and they went in, and I told that one of the drivers there, the other guy too, I said, get me a straitjacket. And he says, okay, good. They come out with one, and I told him I was going to put this jacket on him, and as soon as I got him on it, boy, I strapped that thing down tight. And then we took him off, but I don't know what happened to him from then on. Then another experience, one time, it was right around the corner from my room, there was an Indian, and he got a little pie-eyed, got drunk, and he stabbed the guy next to him in the bed, in the bunk right next to him. So that caused a lot of commotion. So I had to take care of that. That was my duty. And I went to the hospital with the guy, and I gave a couple pints of blood. Then I had to stay there for 4 or 5 days. You're only supposed to give 1 pint.
Right.
And so, he got better. And then they had another guy, just a little instance that happened there. We had a lot of good times too, but one guy standing on the balcony up on the 2nd floor. They had a little balcony up there and the stairs coming up to it. And the guys hollered at me and said, oh, this guy's up there and going to kill himself. So I said, okay. I walked up the stairs and walked out there, and he said, I'm going to kill myself, and I don't want to go overseas, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do that. And I said, good. And I give him a push. Plonk, he down on the ground. He come walking in pretty soon. He had to walk past me because I was going down the stairs and he was going up again. I told him, I said, no more of that funniness. I said, next time I'm going to push you down head first. And he just brushed himself off, and he never gave us another bit of trouble. But that's the kind of people I had to deal with all the time. I mean, someone going to a mood, different moods and stuff like that. But most of the time we had a lot of fun because it was a free post. There was MPs on the post. And if we had the people over the weekend, we'd say, okay, you guys, well, they'd all come up with, can we get passes to go to New York City or Philadelphia or Baltimore, different areas closer by and stuff like that? I'd say, okay, when the roster comes out, we'll see who's on KP and who's on guard duty. I says, and if you're not on that, I'll tell you, I said, Friday night at 5 o'clock, I said, I want to see all you guys disappear to town. And they did too. I said, I don't want to see you back here Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, about 7 o'clock. So I said, I can get you in here and line you up and get you checked in for bed check and stuff like that. So, and that's what they appreciated. Them guys did that. So.
Now, did you go any of those places? Did you go into Washington or Philadelphia or somewhere like that?
I would just go to Washington, D.C. because, well, let's see, that Navy outfit was just south of us there, and Annapolis Highway run right alongside our barracks, just about 100 yards over was that highway. And then just down a little ways was the train track, and they had an Odin station there. And we get on that, 33 minutes was in Washington, D.C. That thing went like a streak of lightning. And so I'd go to Washington, D.C. I liked it there. It was a lot better. I mean, Washington, D.C. during the war was a free city. You didn't have to salute. You ride the buses free. They had Pepsi-Cola had a big whole building, 6, 7 stories, that they had just for entertainment for soldiers. And when you went in there, you couldn't pay money. You always had to go in and you buy coupons, nickel coupon. And you have all the Pepsi you wanted to drink free. You had to pay a nickel for a hot dog or a hamburger and different things like that. And if you wanted to go up to one store, you could go up there and just a big lounge for everybody. And then the next one up was where you go press your clothes if you want to clean up a little bit and all stuff like that. It was nice in Washington, D.C. And the town of Washington, D.C. is very, very interesting. You have a lot of fun there if you want to see all the sights and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I did. I mean, I went to a lot of places there.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had a pretty good deal there. Now, how did that deal come to an end?
Well, and we called him Yu-Hu Lear. He was the general of the East Coast of the United States Army. So, and he put on an order that all soldiers who had been in a year in service and was in Class A condition had to go overseas. And so that come out in about maybe August, September, or something like that. And so I was first on the list of that. But then I had good acquaintance and good deals with all my officers there and stuff like that, especially the old colonel up there at the headquarters. And he's seen my name on there, and he called me in and he says, "How much money you got, Coach?" And I said, "Oh, I got about 25 bucks. He says, "Enough to get to Kalamazoo and back?" And I said, "Yeah, it's only 14 bucks. Round trip ticket to Detroit," and I hitchhike home. And he says, "Get out of here." He says, "You got a verbal order, commanding officer." He says, then he said, "Don't come back for a couple of days until this shipment gets out of here." So I jumped shipment that way a few times, but then finally along August, last October, 1st November, I got caught up with it. I couldn't find any more excuses to get out. And so I had to go overseas from there.
Okay. Now, where did you ship out of?
I shipped out of Dix, New Jersey. Went up to Dix, New Jersey. I got on the Queen Elizabeth ship. We went overseas unescorted because one of the fastest ships on the oceans.
Right. Now, where did they put you on the ship? Were you down below the waterline somewhere?
Well, okay, we had a deal. I can go into some of that too. Okay, we went on the British ship. British are very classic deals, you know. Americans don't make any difference. I had to sleep with my men, that was all right. But on a British ship, I was a sergeant, I had to stay in the white area. Mm-hmm. And then we had the red area, green area and the red area, I forget. And that's where they had the other soldiers and stuff like that. But I was in the white area. It was double loaded. So 12 hours I was down in the hole in a room where there's 13 other guys. And then 12 hours I had to come up on deck, on the promenade deck, and just take our blankets and stuff and lay on that deck and sleep up there, and that's all we did.
So what was the weather like on that crossing? Was the weather okay?
The weather was good. I mean, we didn't have any problem at all in the weather because, I mean, that ship just goes through everything. Mm-hmm. The only thing they did is one time, you know, and we all get lax. American soldiers, should I tell you something? You ever been a soldier?
No, sir.
Okay, the most cockiest soldiers in the world. Excuse my expression. And so we was all told everywhere we went to carry a life preserver, you know. And so we did that sort of half-hearted and stuff like that, you know. And so we've gotten about a good half a day or a day maybe out of Scotland. And they had one big old gun on the back, Queen, and they start shooting that. And you ought to see us scrambling for our life preservers then. Oh yeah, so that was a little comical, but boy, it scared the daylights out of us for a little bit, you know.
Now, were there a lot of men getting seasick on the ship? Because I think most of them would have been new to that kind of thing.
Boy, well, I didn't notice so much on the way over, but when I come back, seasickness was terrible.
Mm. All right.
But I mean, some of them guys no more than got on the boat and they were seasick already. So I never had any trouble with that. So.
And the Queen Elizabeth in decent weather has got to be a better way to cross than most. So.
Yeah, because I mean, well, the smaller ships go.
Yep.
That just goes.
All right.
You start running around 14, 16 knots of that thing. Ain't nothing can catch it, and it goes right through the waves. You know.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, where did they land you then when you got to Britain?
We landed outside of Scotland, and they had to shuttle us in by smaller boats because the harbors there weren't deep enough to get the Queen in there. And the other harbors around, I mean, we couldn't go in the English Channel because the Germans would have sunk us there, see. So we just landed in Scotland, got off the boat and shuttled in, got on a train, right down to Liverpool Station, right out on the docks, on a boat, right across the English Channel. As soon as our boat was loaded, we was on the way across the English Channel.
All right. So then they land you in France then?
I landed in France, Le Havre, France. And I landed there, and about a day and a half there, and they put us right on 48 trains. I mean, the regular boxcars, that's
Right.
all there were. And I was taken right up to almost to the front lines.
And what unit did you join?
I joined the 100th Infantry Division there
All right.
as a replacement.
Okay. And where were they at the time?
And a little while, I was just outside of Le Jon, France.
Okay.
I wished I'd known about this ahead of time. I've got all maps of this stuff that I ordered out of our battles and where we went and stuff like that. But that was what they call it, Lejon. The John, they called it. We call it. And so that's where I was, joined up with the first joined up with the 100th Infantry Division, first come under fire too. So.
And can you describe then what that experience was like?
Oh, that's something else. You're scared to death, you know, because when I got off the train and start marching, I mean, we had to march into the little burg, and then from there we had to march out to the front lines. I mean, they took us out there. Well, we was under the fire. I mean, there was Americans, big guns were shooting over the top of us. And well, we was all scared that was incoming too, and they had to tell us it was outgoing. After you're on the front lines a few hours, you know which is outgoing, which is incoming.
Okay.
You can tell by the sound of the shells.
Right. Now, had the 100th Division been in action very long before you got there?
No. Action, I think, went in around November 1st or something like that. 1st of November. And then, I don't know where they contacted, but that's where I joined them at Le Jon.
Right. Now, do you know what army you were assigned to?
Oh, sure, 7th Army.
Okay, you're 7th Army, so you're kind of in the Alsace-Lorraine sector, kind of northeastern France at that point.
I was down in southern France, because Le Jon is in the southern France. The 7th Army was the farthest American army there was fighting, and we were supposed to join up side by side with the French First Army.
Right.
But the French First Army was never there, it seemed like. So we had two fronts. I mean, we had a side opening and a front.
Right.
Constantly, it seemed like.
Yeah, because the Alsace sector there, that was one where the Germans resisted pretty heavily in some of the different towns that were to the west of the Rhine River, and it was very hard pushing them back in all of those places. And they would counterattack and cause a lot of trouble for you. Now, what kind of reception did you get when you joined your unit?
Oh. Well, I had to go online, and they told me where to go to the CP where the captain was and a couple officers, so I snuck over there and reported in there, and that captain says to me, he says, "Can you handle a machine gun?" I said, "Yes, I can handle a machine gun." Well, I was trained for all that ahead of time. I knew I could take a machine gun apart and put it back together in 3 minutes, and with my eyes blindfolded and so forth. And he says, "Okay," he says, "you go over there and join up with that #1 machine gun unit over there." So I did, and I said, "What do you want me to do?" He says, "Carry ammunition." I wasn't going to tell him I was a sergeant. I was too scared yet. So I didn't tell him, and I went over there and carried ammunition for a couple of days, and all of a sudden I got called. Runner come up to me one night, right at about dusk one night. He says, "The old man wants to see you. The old man wants to see us." "Okay, what do you want to see me for? What do I do now?" I went back there, and he says, are you a Sergeant Koetje? And I says, yep, I'm a sergeant. He says, you better take and do your duty. So I had to take over then. Well, that wasn't so nice either. But
Were you taking over a squad or a platoon? Or?
I took over a section,
Okay.
2 machine guns. See, when they're infantry, you got 3 infantry, 3 rifle platoons, and 1 weapon platoon.
Right.
You got mortars, 2 mortars in there, and 2 machine guns. So I was over the machine gun section. And my buddy Gordon Roberts was over the mortar section. And then after we was online there a short time, we didn't use them in mortars. They were just like popcorn, you know.
Why wouldn't you use the mortars? Was it just nothing to shoot at? Or?
Well, there's stuff to shoot at. But the Germans get in fortifications, and the mortars didn't touch them, you know.
Right.
So that was it. So we had to have stronger stuff to bust them down, shoot straight, direct, flat trajectory artillery into them and stuff like that.
Right. Now, did your unit stay in one place for a while after you got there?
No, we was on the go. We moved from, I can't recall all this, but after John, we started, and we got the Germans on the run, and that's what we liked, because when they was running, they had their backs to us,
Right.
and they wasn't shooting at us. So that's what we liked. I mean, then we just kept pushing on and stuff like that. There was one little place, I mean, we take little town after town, and we'd set up fortification around the town, you know, and then sometimes we'd goof off a little bit. And I can't recall the town, but I can still see my guys doing it. There was a glass factory. They made those little wine glasses and stuff like that. It was a conveyor, went up to the 2nd floor. It was loaded with glasses, little glasses. And the guys laying down there in the bottom and just stand there and see how far they could shoot up that. How many glasses they could break before it would ricochet off, you know.
Okay. Now, as you're on the move like this, were you seeing anything of the civilian population, either French or German?
Yeah, there's a lot of them hidden in the basements and stuff like that, you know. And sometimes, well, there's just one instance there. We was going through one little burg, and I don't know what burg it was or anything like that. Here comes, and was pushing right alongside the buildings, one building to another, and, you know, and a woman comes sailing out of there and screaming bloody murder, and she couldn't talk English, but she could say baby, and they was having a baby. Somebody's having a baby in the basement there. But I just pushed her aside, and I says, get the medics. And I had not a medics. I had other things to do. I could.
Right. Now, did the Germans counterattack you much as you were doing this?
Oh, yeah, different times. And I recall, I'm not going to go through a lot of them, because just a minute.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't need to talk about anything you don't feel like talking about.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No, we had a counterattack one night. And then I was just going to tell you about that a little bit. And that's wicked, because you don't know where they're at. You can't get out of your hole or nothing like that. You ain't supposed to. If you get moved, I mean, your own men would shoot you and stuff like that. So the Germans counterattacked us that one night, and they didn't get very far because we held them off. I got up to my #1 gun, and I said, just keep that thing going, hot as you can go. I said, we'll see if we can get ammunition up to you as much as we can. And I finally got the other one going too, so then we can get a crossfire in front of us like that.
So they were mostly coming at you with infantry then?
Yeah, infantry, they just come foot soldiers.
Right.
And so then we got that over with, and the next night it was sort of comical, because one of the guys that we dug in, I don't know, a foot of hill or on a hillside or something like that, and there was some brush there, and he took his raincoat because we was always soaking wet. We didn't look for a dry place to drive into or nothing. And it was winter time, and it was snow and then melt and soaking wet. And he hung his raincoat. He took his raincoat and hung it on this brush here. Then after a while, I mean, it got dark and stuff like that, and everything was sort of quieted down. And all of a sudden, this guy started shooting. He hollered, halt, halt. And then old coach stayed right there, so he shot 7, 8 times through it. And that thing didn't drop. And we had to kid him. I said, the next day we seen it, you know, and we says, boy, oh boy, you sure didn't miss your target.
Right. Now so basically, so the winter of 44, 45, you're up there kind of northeastern France and pushing toward Germany, moving around a fair amount. How good a job did they do at keeping you fed and supplied while you were up there?
That's the worst part. Okay, you're a cook, you're on the back, rear echelon a little bit, you got to drive up there and feed us. What you gonna do?
Send somebody else?
Ain't nobody else to send you, you know. But sometimes they get up close enough so that we could take and say, okay, you two guys sneak back, get something to eat, get you back here and hold over for your positions and stuff like that. Because we didn't want to open up enough so the Germans are the smartest soldiers in the world, and we were not. We're a bunch of civilian soldiers, you know. And so we had to very, very carefully just send men back to get some chow and then come back up and so forth like that. That's where we got fed sometimes. Okay. And sometimes we just get OC rations or K ration. We'd eat K rations and get sick.
Okay. And did you have problems with men getting things like trench foot or other sorts of frostbite?
Yes, I got frostbite too. That's one reason why I left the front lines. Well, it was 17 degrees up there, and we didn't have the uniforms. I mean, today, they got these here insulated coats and shoes and boots and everything else. Them days, we just had the old wool uniforms and a pair of army boots, and trying to keep warm. So I had 3 pairs of wool ODs on and 3 shirts and a field jacket, trying to keep warm.
Right.
My hands were so cold I couldn't hardly fire my rifle. So.
Now, how long did you then spend in the front lines before they had to take you out?
Oh well, I'll go into that. We've been fighting along the way there, and different things. I mean, and things were going pretty good. And all of a sudden we hit Vichy, France. And Vichy, France was the start of the Siegfried Line. That was a French line that was going to be built to protect the French from the Germans. And a little farther down the road was the Maginot Line. And that had hydraulic pillboxes in it. The old cylinder would come right out of the top of that old hill up there, and they could shoot any direction they wanted, and they just mowed us down like nothing. They kept us pinned down like mad. We couldn't move. We couldn't move. We could move at night after dark a little bit sometimes. And so we hit that, and boy, stood still. And we got going, and we tried the different things. I mean, they tried to bomb it. I mean, and that's when I got one concussion. They dropped the American pilot, instead of taking the drive and just diving it down like this and sending that bomb away from us over the Germans. No, he comes circling around, and that thing just skipped off in the top and exploded over us. The boy flattened us out like pancake. And so you'd have to take a little time to get over that. Well, so we spent there 2 days, and then all of a sudden on the second day or third day, I think it was, they run up these self-propelled cannons, 155s and 105s on half tracks. And we was on a knoll over here, and I was dug in over the edge of it a little bit. And they started going up there, and they was going to fight. This wasn't too far, only about 150, 200 yards over there where that old pillbox. That's how close he was to it. And so they stand there and they start hammering right on the side of that. It looked just like a mountain. They had camouflaged that thing so good. And so in one spot, and then 6 big guns lined up in a row, one over here, one over here, one, just keep firing all night long.
And they used direct fire? They shot straight at it, or did they have to do it?
No, direct fire. I mean, that trajectory. No,
So the Germans didn't have anti-tank guns around or anything like that to shoot back at them with?
well, they could have, but see, our guns, our tank guns there was on the back of the hill, so they'd come rolling up and they'd have it all zeroed in. They go up there and they have to stop the tank to shoot it. Boom, bang, they come back. Boom, bang, another one.
So they didn't just sit up there waiting to be shot at?
No, they didn't
go
sit
get
still
under
1
cover.
minute. They just come sailing up there. It was just a matter of seconds. They just roll up to.
Right.
They took their positions. They knew where to stop, when to shoot, stuff like that.
Now, did that work?
Yes, they sat there and hammered away at that, and they finally blew a hole in that thing. Oh, maybe 8, 9 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Maybe a little later. I don't know. And we had gotten orders to attack, and I was one infantry to get point men. And so I was appointed point man that day to start out. And so I took off, and I went past my number 1 gun, and I said, okay. Well, I had an Indian, full-blooded Indian. He was a good, hard soldier. Oh boy, he was a good soldier too. And I says, Chief, I says, cover me. And he says, I got you covered, Koetje. I says, okay. So I was down that hill and working my way down there around rocks and stones and everything like that. And just looking over, I was trying to figure out where my thing is, so if I could get behind something or something, just don't run out in the open, because that was right across open fire field. And I was working that, and here comes 2 guys carrying pole charges. You know what a pole charge is?
Explosive on the end of a pole.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's dynamite, TNT, and nitro starch, all wrapped up on the end of a pole. And they was carrying them about 20 pounds, 25 pounds apiece. And they took off across that field, and they never got hit. And I seen that, well, they run up against that wall, well, then they couldn't, the people on the Germans couldn't shoot down straight, so they was laying up against that wall. There was a ditch there, and they was in that, and they lay down, they just flopped down, and I seen them. I seen them when they went, and I was watching them, and I thought, hokey pokey, them guys got to get that pole charge, get that in that hole, and they didn't do it, so I took off, just as hard as I could run. Got up there and jumped, I dove in that hole, in that ditch, and I says, this one guy, I didn't know him, I mean, I said, you get up here and stand with your back against that wall and hold your hands like that, and I'm going to climb up on you. Because it's just out of my reach, because I couldn't get that pole charge up there and in that hole. And that wall was about that thick that we drove.
So the hole that you're trying to get the charge into, is that the gun port or where the gun's firing from?
Yeah, that's where the guns have been firing in there, one right after another, just on one spot. Armor piercing. And so. And then, so I did that, and finally I got that thing wiggled up in that hole and stuff like that, and I felt it just tip over, you know, just take the pressure off my pole, ripped that cord and dropped to the ground. Boom, boy, just shook the ground all around us, and then I had dropped down and laid there in the ditch there, and I told that guy, I said, okay, get up here again. Get your hands, we're going again. And I told the other guy that had the pole charges, you hand it to me and we're going to do the same thing again. And so we did, blew that one. And then I threw a hand grenade in the hole, just so some smarty aleck didn't stick his head out and start shooting at it. So that's what happened, I mean, and that's where I got my Bronze Star for bravery. So. And then the medic come up to me and he says, Koetje, what's the matter? And I said, why? He says, you was limping terrible across that run, and you're running. I said, I didn't even notice it because you don't feel nothing. I didn't got any feeling. And I said, oh, my left foot's a little sore, I guess. So he says, I'm going to take that boot off. And then they did, and it just, my legs popped out, my foot did. So he tagged me, and I went back. Well, I just laid there for a little while. And the engineers come up with explosives, more TNT and nitro starch and dynamite, because after you get inside of them pillboxes, they are all tunneled together.
Right.
And there's doors, and you just don't go open the door because they got charges on the other side below you. So we blew our way through. That's what we had to do. And they came up with a bunch of explosives and stuff like that. And one driver, and they had a driver and another man sitting there, and he just picked me up and threw me over the hood and grabbed a hold of my belt and says, "Okay, let's take off." And they did. They brought me up to the first aid station. And then I was there a little while. I mean, it wasn't much going. I was out of the excitement then. And they sent me down, and there was in Saarbrücken. No, Saarbrücken.
Yeah, but it was Saarbrücken is a German town, and Saarburg is another. So there's two of them, but they're in that same area.
Yeah, right in the same area there. And so I was in the French one, Saarbrücken.
Well, Strasbourg also. Strasbourg is the large city. Saarburg is a little bit smaller town.
Yeah, just a little town.
Yeah.
And that's where he was at. And there was a French garrison there. And they had the French used a lot of horses and mules and stuff yet. And so they cleaned out these stables, and they put just army cots. We just had army cots, and they put them in there, and where the horses stood like this, they had lined their own cots up like that. And then day before Christmas, they started in the morning, and they brought up army beds with mattresses on them. And boy, we thought we was in paradise just about that way, you know. And then they would start to clean us up and stuff like that. I hadn't shaved. I didn't have time to shave.
Right.
Take it off. I said, "Don't even take off my clothes. Cut it off."
Yep.
And that's what they did. Got us different clothing and stuff like that, and cleaned us up that day. And then that was Christmas Day, the day before Christmas, Christmas Eve. The nurses sang Christmas hymns, and the boards and stuff like that all got together. Well, they had big curtains in that thing already, so they shut off all the lights outside. And they turned off the lights, and everybody's sitting there. I mean, every guy wasn't dry in the place. And all of a sudden, the guy said to me, "Boy," he says, "here comes Bed Chuck Charlie." Because the Germans every night send a plane over us to try to check out, see where it's at. We call it Bed Chuck Charlie. We never shot at it. We didn't want to give our positions away. So then I listened, and I said to him, "Boy, that's a little different." I said, "Hey," that's a two-motor plane. And he says, "Yeah, I guess it is." And that old thing started climbing up there and peeled off. I'll tell you what they was aiming at. But it peeled off and dropped 2 bombs. And it direct hit both of the barracks, I mean the stables there. There was 80 men in mine and 80 men in the one next door to us. They only picked up 4 of us that lived out of that deal.
Wow.
So that was happened there. That was rough. Well, then I finally come to in Paris after that, after they dug me out and found me I was alive. So.
Now, did you ever rejoin your unit, or did you
you bet.
Okay.
Yep. Well, I went back to the hospital. I was in the hospital 4 months. And they didn't know how to treat you and stuff like that. They didn't do a lot of...
Yeah. Now, was it frostbite that was your main problem, or
frostbite? Well, then concussion for that last bombing.
Right. Well, yeah.
That knocked me through a loop. I mean, I was getting over the frostbite. I was thawing out pretty good, and I thought, well, I'm not doing too bad. And I said, another couple of days, I'll go back to the front.
Right.
Oh man! After that, I mean, and I don't know how I lived through it. I mean, it's just like 10-ton truck hitting you and running over you. You know, my eyes were bulged out. I was bleeding at my ears, and my nose was bleeding a little bit, and I hurt every place in my body. Oh, God, just terrible.
Right.
But after that hit, before that, when I just before, when they start, I heard their moms click, you know, because you hear them release them.
Mm-hmm.
And I grabbed my mattress and I threw my cot out of the way from there, and I took that mattress and pulled it over me right up against the wall in the corner.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that saved
Probably
me.
why you're still alive.
Yeah. So, but oh,
and so they shipped you out to a hospital in Paris, and then
they took me into Paris, and then the Battle of Bulge started.
right.
Down up there, and the casualties were pouring in, and they had to keep shuttling us back.
Mm-hmm.
So I got in Paris, and I finally come to one day. I don't know what day it is, between Christmas and New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 4 doctors, 4 officers standing over me debating what to do with me. And then they said, well, they're checking me over and stuff, and that one doctor says, well, we should send him to the States, he says. But the other 2 says no, or the other 3 said no, he'll never make it, we'll never make it. And we got to keep more medication on him than just riding on a boat someplace.
Mm-hmm.
So they shipped me over to England. And then I was in different hospitals there.
Now, during that time, were you stuck in bed the whole time?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
you couldn't get up and move around or do much?
I didn't, no, I mean, I was in Birmingham, England, where I landed first hospital. It was a nice hospital. And I got a little trouble there because I was laying there and just holding a book. I could hold a book in one hand already. This hand was pretty bad yet. And I was reading, and then that old officer walked in there. It was a lieutenant and the medics. And somebody hollered, attention. Well, I had enough training before. A patient in the Army is not a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't pay attention to him. I wasn't a soldier, just a patient. He come up there and grabbed that book out of my hand and threw it on the floor, and he's standing there and he was telling me he was an officer and stuff like that. I looked at him and I said, if I get out of this book, you wouldn't even be mud.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't talk to me. I said, boy, if you don't get out of here, I might get strength enough to get out. And he went storming out of there, and I thought, oh, I'm in trouble. And then he come back. But I shouldn't tell this, but when I was in the aid station, I was laying there, and on the table was a couple big old tapes, Army, mm-hmm. I mean, plastic tape,
right.
I mean. And so I had a hand grenade yet. So after it stripped down, I took that hand grenade and taped it right between my legs,
mm-hmm.
right up there tight. So, and just the day, just before that, a couple of days, I mean, my buddy next to me, his name is Al Hobson. He was from Kalamazoo too. They put us together there because we was just ornery as could be, and mm-hmm. bitter as all get out, and we wouldn't talk or anything. So they thought we'd get acquainted a little better. So I took that and I had Al twist the top of it off and take it over to the window and pour the powder out of that hand grenade. Mm-hmm. Then we detonated the cap, then we put it back together again. And he come up there and just blown his stack like man. And meantime, I'd taken that hand grenade loose, and I stood it there. And I says, here, if you're so stinking smart, I use a little false language. I said, take this. I said, I'll pull the pin on it first. And I pulled the pin, and I said, now take it. And I never seen a guy turn so white in all my life. Oh, no. Well, that stirred up a big fuss in the hospital because I had a grenade. So then I asked for a chaplain because I thought, boy, oh boy, those guys are going to raise us hot with us now. And he had that officer told the nurses not to call the chaplain. That one says, I can't call the chaplain. He gave an order. And I says, lady, did you want them to their bars? She said, what do you mean? I said, I asked for a chaplain. I'm a patient in an Army hospital. When a patient asks for a chaplain, you better start running and getting them. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's it. I said, otherwise I'm going to turn you in. Boy, she went. A few minutes later, big old Texan, a full colonel, jolly guy, come up there. And, what's the matter, Bill? I said, oh, I don't know. I guess I'm in deep trouble. on. And I said, what do you mean? I said, I pulled all this on him. He says, yeah. Where's that hand grenade? I said, I got it right here. And he says, is it live? And I said, no. He said, well, I'll take it then. I said, all right, you take it. I'll take the screw top. I'll show you this is empty in it. So he did, and he said, no, you ain't in big trouble. He says, you and Hal, and the other two guys, 4 of us in a row there, was always just cutting up a little bit. He says, we'll be out of here before the hour's out. They shipped us over to another hospital. So that was a nice hospital. It was on a ward, and only the 4 of us was in that ward. And we stayed there till we went to rehabilitation hospital.
All right. And so was that still in England?
Still in England. That was right outside of Coventry, England. Coventry was a town that was hit hard by the Germans.
Right.
Terrific. I got to see the old churches, and then there's a lot of the rumble there yet when I was there. Yeah. So.
Now, you said they did eventually get you back to your unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we had to get past so many tests down there, and that was, they thought they was going to pull Army stuff on us too. Right outside of that camp there, it was on a little plateau, and you just go down the hill, and there was 4 corners, and there was a pub there. And this guy, I didn't go all the time, but I didn't like beer that well. I didn't like that English beer, but we didn't get a pass. We just go down there, and we tell the English kids around there, see the MPs coming, tell us. And the guy that run the pub, he liked it because, boy, we spent money like and there was trap doors, into basements, different basements under their pub. And he'd open them up, and then a bunch of guys go down there. So, and us guys, we took and stole pitchers, because they had them little glasses of beer about that big, and they're walking up that pump on the pub on there. It's in the middle of a hallway there in the window, and they lift the window and they pump a glass of beer. And it'd be a penny or a half penny. And we'd get pitchers, and he'd pump them for us. We'd pay for them. And that was big business for him.
Right.
And the floors are slippery down there. There was door at one end, door at another. And all of a sudden somebody hollered MPs, and I was up there buying the beer. And I was in pretty good shape again yet. And so here comes an MP, and he had his billy club and just gonna whop me one, and he didn't hit me. He hit the floor and was sliding down the hall. And another one come from the other way, and oh boy, I thought, boy, yeah, he's running a good pace. So I go sliding him. I flipped him over, and he went sliding down there, and then an officer come in and running in there, and he was going to come at me. I didn't back down. I just barked right out there. I says, sir, put that billy club down. He says, what? You're not telling me what to do. I says, you're never going to hit me. And he says, what? I said, see those 2 guys? And I said, I'm not going to rough you up, but I said, if you come at me, I'm going to protect myself. I said, so just put them down. I'll go free will with you. I says, and one nice thing, in England, nobody could carry arms. And that was, our MPs are nothing to carry arms. And so they couldn't shoot at us or anything like that. So I took a name and took me off back to the rehabilitation hospital there, and they had a little guardhouse down there. And there wasn't nothing in there but a bunk and cold. So the guys in my hut that I was in down there rolled up my old mattress and bed. Here they come. And the guard says, you can't go in there, you can't go in there. And the guy says, what are you talking about? They took and brought my stuff in there and give it to me so I could have something to sleep and keep warm that night. And then the next morning they turned me loose. And then they had a report. They said I had to be court-martialed. Well, I know they couldn't court-martial me for nothing, but they had to go through a little procedure. And so they had an officer from the 4th Division captain come down there and talk to me and stuff like that. And he asked me what I did, and I told him. And he said, "What'd you do that for?" I says, "My mother didn't raise no dummy." I says, "You can stand there and let somebody beat you up at the billy club?" I says, "And I'm an old infantryman." I says, I "I didn't care what you want to say." I said, "I wasn't going to take no beating." And he says, "Well, I can break you." I said, "Well, I agreed with him. But when I got my sergeant's stripes, I applied for a permanent rank. So it'd take an act of Congress to break me, do it. So I didn't tell him that. I just let him go. And said, "Well," I said, "I know," I says, "you're going back to the front in a few days." And he says, "By the time you get up there," he says, "your captain or your officers up there asked you where your stripes are." And you say, "Well, you got broke back there." Let's just laugh at it and give it back to you. And I says, "Yeah, probably so." So he turned me loose, and I had to sign the roster on the hour. Go in there and sign the roster.
Right. So keep track of you then.
Keep track of me. Wow. Then the guys in my hut, then there was in them tar paper huts up there in England, and they all said, "Well, we'll all take turns. We'll take it first hour, you take the second hour." And that's what we did. And they couldn't figure out what I was doing. But the roster got signed anyway.
All right.
So then I had to go through another ordeal there.
Okay.
Is they had orders out that we had to fire rifles, had to fire machine guns, we had to fire mortars before we could ship overseas again. And so they'd line us up and tell us, they'd say, "Okay, today we're going out to the rifle range," and that was, it's in April, I guess. Yeah, first part of April, because I was only on 3 weeks on the line again. So I went out there, and then we had a colonel out there, and he's standing there, and he says, all lined up, because all combat people, you know, and they didn't care. They were always goofing a little bit. And he says, "I got $20 bill for the best score on the rifle range today." I piped up and I said, "I'll take that $20. Oh, he says, "Smart ass." Yeah. Well, he says, "We'll see once." I said, "All right." And I felt good. I knew I could do it then. So I went out there and zeroed in my rifle, and I got on the line. I shot a perfect score on one position. I had to fire in prone position and kneeling position. And I turned around and I said, "Gonna give me that $20 now?" He said, "You only fired one round." I said, "Yeah, I know." So I fired the second one, and I fired another second perfect score, you know. And then he came over and I said, "Give me that $20 now. You said nobody else is going to do that." He said, "All right." He finally gave it to me, and I went back to camp. But then he come up, says, "How'd you know you was going to do that?" Well, I says, "I felt good." And I said, "I knew how to shoot them rifles." And I'll tell you a little of those secrets, sir. For about 3 weeks, I was on the East Coast Army rifle team, shooting competition every day. And I says, "And you know what that calls for? 95 points every time you shoot. You got to shoot between 95 and 100 points." I says. And I said, "I lasted 3 weeks." He said, "What'd you quit for?" I said, "My shoulder was so sore I couldn't hardly hold that rifle up no more." So I said, that was too, it was all volunteer. You just, if you didn't want to shoot anymore, you just said, "I'm done." They'd send you back. Nothing against you or anything like that. So, and then he says, "Oh, that's why you're so smart." So then shortly after that, I got on the boat and went right across over to France. I landed in Le Havre again and got on the train and went across France and into Germany. And where did I get? Yeah, we had gotten orders. Our division, our regiment, gotten orders to take and drive south because they said there was a German division in Italy, and they had to come through that pass between Germany and Italy, and we had to go down there and cut that pass off so they couldn't get up at us. So we was doing that, and we wasn't running into no fire or nothing. Every once in a while, some diehard would take a pop shot at us. One almost got me one day. I was sitting up on the tank underneath the gun, because it was a nice day out, and people were, and then there's people, their soldiers were just coming down the road, hoard some, you know.
Right.
And we just stand there and keep passing them back and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, we come up to a little knoll there in the house up there on that knoll, and then somebody took a pot shot at me and almost picked me off. And the old tank commander says, "Where'd that shot come from?" And I says, "Watch my tracer." I shot it in that house. And then we was number 3 tank back. And they said there, number 1, all 3 of them shot high explosive at this level. And then that guy that was in there, I don't know if he was one, but when somebody took off running across the field out of that house. Well, he didn't get very far.
But for the most part, at this point, the German soldiers are just surrendering to you as they come by.
Yeah, well, they all wanted to surrender, see. That's what we wanted, too. I mean, the German soldiers, there's 2 types, you know. There's SS troops, and there's Wehrmacht.
Right.
You ever heard of Wehrmacht soldiers?
Yeah, they're the regular army soldiers.
No, well, they're the people's soldiers, just like we were.
Well, there was a Volkssturm and things like that, but by the end of the war, the Germans were using teenage boys and older men, and whatever they could find.
Whatever they could find, anybody that carried a gun, you know.
Right.
And those guys are easy, because if we could pick off the SS troopers over or their officers over them, we could get them out of there.
Right.
Them guys would surrender like flies, you know. They didn't want to fight. We knew that too, so.
Okay. Now, as you were getting farther into Germany, and if you're heading toward Italy, you're probably getting into Austria, because you have to get to Austria, which was part of Germany officially at that point. How did the civilians respond to you? Did they just stay out of your way? Or?
No, they'd go down in their basement. They all had wine cellars, you know, and stuff like that in the villages. All through there, we would go, and it's just a group of houses in a little village, and they farmed the outside of it. We was going into the foothills of the Alps, and that's where they had them. That's where they were into too, and that's what we've seen there. They had them cows. They'd get them up in the morning, start circle them, get them in an area, and they'd start up the side of the mountains, and pretty soon they'd stay up there. You know, we were watching that, and then people would stay out of sight from us all the time. So.
Now, did you have orders to not fraternize or stay away from the people, or?
Well, yeah. Well, after the war was over, they had no fraternization. Tim, thank you, brought it up. I mean, and that was $50 fine if we talked to them or got in a German vehicle or anything like that. And they might as well told us to take and drive them, because we did anyway, you know. We had fun. Well, then we ended the war in Urbach and Ober-Urbach. In Germany, that part of Germany is way down south in there. It's on the foothill of the Alps. One was a Catholic town, and the other was a Protestant town. And I don't remember which one we was in. And so we had to take, and it was along a highway that went through there in between them. And we was patrolling that highway and stuff like that. And then our guys, they went through everything, you know. They found a couple of these there German bikes, I mean motorcycles. And we was told not to ride them, but they found gas, you know. They go get a jerry can full of gas and to put the gas in, away they go. And half of them kids, I mean, some were never seen a motorcycle. Some were from New York City and the Bronx and stuff like that. You know, they never seen a cow or a horse or anything like that. And that one kid wanted to ride it so bad. Well, around every one of them houses down there, got a little curb like that, it's a sidewalk, and then they got a stone wall around it. And he come riding down that street, and he didn't know how to stop it, and he banged into the wall and broke his ankle. And boy, that stirred up a little fuss for a little while. And then this is what wasn't funny. It was funny to us guys. Our guys, I was sitting there in one of them houses. I mean, where I built it, and I could overlook. It was on the sort of side of the hill, and I could overlook everything. And two of them were monkeying around down there, and they found one of these old air raid sirens that you turn by hand in a barn. So here they do it, drag it out, you know. And that one kid we had in my outfit there, he could talk German. And so them two guys start cranking that old thing up. And that siren went and he hollered, Flieger come, alles weg, Flieger come. Hokey pokey, that town went, that little village went wild. You know, them people just scared to death, you know, and we worked till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that time, getting that little village quieted down. Getting those people back to normal a little bit. That's the last time we pulled that. Right. But
now, how long did you stay there then once the war ended?
Well, in there we stayed there, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. No, it was a little longer than that, maybe 4 weeks. I'll tell you a little story that happened to me. Okay, the war ended and we was in there, and then they brought our kitchen up and they found a lean-to alongside of a barn or something like that. They set the kitchen in there and we ate outside. Well, we never seen any German kids or women or anything. And so us guys would sit on the curb, little curb around there and outside, and we'd eat. And about the second or third morning like that, I mean, after the war was over, we were sitting down there, we hadn't seen a civilian, and all of a sudden I looked up and there was 2 little girls. Big old eyes sunken in, hungry as could be. Didn't have any food. And they sat there just right in front of me like this, and I was eating, you know, and all of a sudden my fork wouldn't go no farther. And I stand there looking at them little kids, they're 5 and 6 years old, 4 or 5. Like that. And I just couldn't. And I'd stand there and I thought, wow. And all of a sudden there's a lump in my throat about that big. Right. And I stand there and I just took my fork and gave the one little girl, had my spoon in my pocket, gave the other, and that just emptied my misc. So then that was nice. I mean, they thought, so the next meal they was there too. And I did it again. I did it at supper time for about 4 days. And then I didn't eat too much. So then we had a formation, and we just got this new captain from West Point in. He was a liaison officer between the American and French armies. And we had a formation there, and here old J Koetje topples over. Boom, out like a light, you know. And they couldn't get me come to right away, so they had to get an ambulance and haul me back to a hospital and stuff like that. And the old captain, when I tippled over, he said, well, if you wouldn't need that, drink all that old rot gut booze around here, he says, you can stand up and take this. And my men spouted out, Captain, you got to apologize to Sergeant. He doesn't drink. Oh, well, think about that. Well, them guys didn't give up on it. So then after I went to hospital for about 5, 6 days, I come back, and then they were sending a report back, malnutrition. And wow, okay, can't eat no more out in the open and sit out in the open like that. So we had to find little shelters and stuff like that, and we had to be supervised when we ate and stuff like that. But I'd run back and get seconds for them 2 little girls and close my mess kit and come out and give it to them and tell them to run home to their mama and eat it there, not out in the open there. So that went like that. And then we got orders we were going to move, and they heard about it. And those 2 little girls, I still got them. My sisters got them. 2 little dolls made out of stockings, and they gave them to me.
Right.
And that was something. nice, I mean, that I remember. But the worst part of it all is we had to turn that territory over to the Russians, and they were ruthless, you know. So then we went to Kingen, outside of Stuttgart, 14 kilometers outside of Stuttgart. Nice little town, and the people, well, they was very nice there too. We had a nice time there. We didn't have too much trouble. The Autobahn run right through Kingen, just on the outskirts, you know. And so we had to police the Autobahn and stuff like that. And I was set on a quartering party up there, and well, I got to tell you that story too. Am I taking up too much time?
No, no.
Okay.
Tape is cheap.
Okay. I mean, is this okay?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so in Kingen, I was set on a quartering party, and I got in there, and I took and told the people in the house right next to the burgomaster's house for my men and stuff like that. And I said, just take everything that's valuable, everything you got. I said, all we want to do is the beds. I said, you don't have to leave your beddings because we got our own bedding. Just so we got a place to stay. And so they did. And the burgomaster's daughter lived there, and she got excited and stuff. We gave them time to do it. But when they were all done cleaning it out, said so. And I went in there, and I picked this one room, and the dresser in there, and I pulled that dresser drawer open, and there laid one of these gold watches, you know. And I thought, boy, that's pretty nice. And I stuck it in my pocket, and I kept it. And after, when the troops come up and stuff like that, we brought, and a couple days later, then the burgomaster went to the officers and said that I was one of the first ones in that house and stuff like that. And so, well, then my officer, when I come back, I didn't have any officer in my platoon. And he finally come back, and then he said, he come up to me, he says, give me that watch, Koetje. And I said, you go jump in the lake. And he said, well, he says, why? And I said, I'm not giving you that watch. He says, I know what you'll do. You'll stick it in your pocket and keep it. I said, and he says, okay. He says, what do you want to do? I says, well, I says, if that German lady that lived here, and then when we go over to the burgomaster's office, and I'll give it to her, and I says, you can witness it, and the captain can witness it. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. And so I did that. And that old burgomaster thought that was the greatest thing, you know. And they treated us like kings. And then after we was there a little while, one time at retreat, I was there about a month, I guess, and they had a field, I mean, out there, they call it sports plots, but they call it a place to train and march and stuff like that. We'd have our formations out there. And it was sort of off in the road on a big curve, and the road was about that high up off in the field. And so they wanted a dedication. They said they wanted to have a dedication, so we got our captain got the army band in there and played the German national anthems and stuff like that. And what took the cake, here was that flagpole up there. And just about a month before that, we'd fought through there with a Nazi swastika up there. Now we had American flag. That ain't the best part of it all. So they went through and they played their anthems and played ours. We took our flag down. And then the captain called me and said, it's front and center. And I kind of up to the front and center of the captain there. He says, 10 paces forward. I did. He says, now get on your knee. I did. And a little girl, all dressed up in her Sunday best. They was all standing up on that bank, the whole town practically, come down with a big wreath of flower and hugging on my neck.
Wow.
That was something. And I took it, and I couldn't take it anymore. And I told the captain, I says, call it ease, call rest. I said, and I turned around, went a dry eye in the company. That's how them people celebrated.
Right.
Then another deal in that little town. I'm probably talking too much.
No.
I'm sorry, I carry away, but
Well, I mean, you know, you had been through a war, you had been through all kinds of things, you had seen and been through terrible things happening, and now it's over.
yeah,
And you're seeing these people who had been the enemy, and at least these people are people too.
yeah, they're
And you
just as human as I
Right.
was, you know.
Right.
And that was nice. I mean, so. Well, we was there about that instant with them dedicating our with a little dedication. They was happy we was back there.
Right.
And so, we was only there. I was there about 3 days in a quartering party, and then the troops come in, and Roberts was on the troops, my buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, let's walk around town. There wasn't just a little burger farming town and stuff like that, and so he did. And we was walking down one side of the street there, and over on another corner there's two Germans. We called them Krauts, if we get them. And they stand there and they looked at us, you know. And Robert says to me, he says, "What's the matter with them Krauts, Scooch?" And I said, "I don't know. They keep staring their eyes out at us." And I says, "Yeah." And they started to cross the street. Well, I whipped my 45 out, and you know, I never carried around in the chamber. And they're just like that. Roberts too, and they walked up to us, and they couldn't say a word of English. And all that I could get out of them, and it says one car, he says, "Come to my house, come to my house, come to my house." So I says, "Okay, let's go." And that was forbidden. I says, "You ready to spend $50?" And he says, "Well, I don't think they'll catch us." So we went, and they lived in a farmhouse where half of the house was barn, and the cattle in it, and the hay loft on there, and the other half was house. And the old folks lived down on the first floor, and the young couple lived up on the second floor. And so we went up there, and he wanted to give us some wine. Well, we said, "All right, well, you drink first." And so we left there. And I said, Robert says, "What does that guy want?" I said, "I can't figure out." So I says, "Well, let's go to the burgomaster and tell him we want a German-English dictionary." So we went over and asked him, and the next day he had a German-English dictionary for us. And so I says, "Robert, come on, let's go back and find out what that guy wants." So we walked over there again and met him, and he was out in the street and met him and stuff, and we showed him in that. Well, I got to go up in his house. He lived on the second floor, and sat down there, word for word, you know, that I had captured him in a town, and I don't remember, and I don't remember capturing him. Because, you know, when you're fighting, you ain't thinking about buddy or this and that,
Right.
you know. I had captured him and treated him halfway decent, because he was wounded when I captured him. And he never forgot that. He told me I was the guy that took and brought him to the American medics, because in a little village or something, his village fighting and stuff. And he was a lieutenant, the first lieutenant in the German army. And I did that, and he remembered that. And he wanted to pay me back and pay us back, because he said he never expected that. He was trained in the German army not to treat prisoners that way, you know. So I was only one of the soldiers, I think, and maybe other soldiers had that experience too. But I captured a guy, and I met him after the war. I have his sword at home. I mean, not at home, our son's got it now. And it's got a nice sword. I had it sent home, it's gold handle with a tiger's head on it with ruby eyes and a swastika on each side of it. And the best stainless steel you can buy. So that was one of the experiences there. So.
Now, did you stay on much longer after that, or did they send you home pretty soon?
No, I stayed on until next February.
Wow.
I stayed over there. Well, we moved from there. We moved to Esslingen, or over Esslingen, in the school building, and we could all be builded in one building and stuff like that. It was a nice school building, and we found an Army garrison there, and we took their Army cots, and well, their bunks just like ours was, double bunks and stuff like that, and took them and set them up in that school building, and we could hold them in and stuff like that a lot better and so forth. We stayed there for quite a while. I mean, from that time on, it was maybe August or September till the next February. So.
Now, was there much to do there as an army of occupation? Or?
Yes. A lot of people thought we was just playing around. People don't realize the chaos after a war. There were millions of people that were displaced. Just, I say millions, but hundreds of thousands of them.
Literally millions across all of Germany, yes.
Yeah, and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to get anything to eat. They're trying to get back to their own country. And they're starving too. You know, Germany's gone, it's depleted, and they were slave labor and stuff like that. They run around with a sheet or a blanket with all their what little belongings they had, and marching down the highways. And this chaos. They'd taken. Well, I don't blame them. I mean, I'd be the same way. You too. I mean, if you was hungry enough, you'd start fighting or killing to get something to eat too, you know. And then we was called out constantly on that. There was raids and stuff like that. We was on the alert most of the time.
Now, were these people who were foreigners, not Germans, or were they mostly German?
Well, Germans, you know, Germans took Netherlands, France, Holland, Belgium, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Czechoslovakia, Latvians, and all them little countries. And they took them, and if, with the men especially, if there was any talent in machine work or anything like that, they had them there.
Right.
And they took them and had them working in these shops and stuff like that. And then there was Russian, they pleased there too. They would give us the hardest time all the time because we were supposed to be buddies with them. You know, comrade. They were too rough. They were really rough.
Well,
people.
the Russians also were probably supposed to go back to the Soviet Union too.
Yeah, they didn't want to.
Right.
They didn't want to because they knew what was waiting for them there too, nothing. So, yeah, we had a lot of police work to do. And we was on call 24 hours a day. But that didn't mean we couldn't have time off to go. And Esslingen and over Esslingen, I mean, well, that's just a little burg. I mean, like Wyoming is to Grand Rapids, but it's just a lot smaller. And was at that schoolhouse, and then the bus, they had OMA buses, electric buses. That they start running. I mean, we got them running. Well, we got the school going, and they burned coal. We got coal bought in so we could have hot water and keep the school warm and stuff like that too. So it was a nice place for us anyway. And we took in that a lot of little details all the time to do, but we kept busy and stuff like that. And
then did men from the unit you were with, did they kind of go home individually when they got enough points, or do you go as a group, or what happened?
Yeah, we reorganized there and got ready to go. And I was all scheduled. We was all scheduled to go to Japan. We was going to go over to Japan. We was going down through the Panama Canal and go to Japan and fight it. And so, and we'd trained. I mean, we had to do a little training because we got every place. We said our company was down to about 104 men out of 240.
Right.
So, and then we got replacements in and stuff like that. We was training with them and getting them ready to go. And then we packed our bags and packed the trains and everything. Got up one morning and we was all ready to go get on the trains and pull out. And the colonel crawled up on one of them cars with a bullhorn and says, "I got good news and bad news. You know, let's have the good news first. The war in Japan is over." He says, well, we was all tickled pink there because we knew, I mean, if we went in there, we was casualties.
Right.
So that was big news, but he said the second news is we're going to stay here. So we had to go back and unpack everything, and we went back to the schoolhouse and lived there till February,
Right.
till the end of January. So, and they had a big, downtown in Esslingen, they had what they call a swim bath, like a big YMCA. And all baths were on the top on the ring, and they had a track up there. Then in the center was down in there was a nice Olympic-sized pool. We got that going, we got that working. We could go in there and then we'd hire them German guys to come in, they massage us every once in a while and stuff like that. We lived like kings then. We had so.
Now, during that time, did the life of the Germans begin to get back to normal a little bit?
Yes. Slowly on, the people come out when we was there. And they come out and filter on the streets and stuff like that. And they found out that we weren't cruel, old, mean soldiers, you know. So, yeah, they filtered out on the streets and stuff like that. And then we had another deal. We had to go shake down houses all the time.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we'd segregate a part of town. We'd shut them off, all the streets going in and stuff like that, early in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Then we go house to house, had a group, 4 or 5 guys, start at the bottom and go through everything in the house, drawers and everything like that, chimneys and everything.
What were you looking for?
Weapons.
Okay.
Weapons, yeah. And we did find some too. One day, I mean, well, see, Nahausen was just a little ways away, and there was a big air base. And we had air base out there. And these guys would go out there and work. Well, they stole a 45, and we went in that house. Well, I couldn't get in that morning. We knocked on the door and told them we wanted to come in. And they kept saying, wait a minute, wait a minute. And so we waited a little while, and pretty soon we hollered again. That guy come out the window out there, and I said, my kid, the guy that could talk German, says, if you don't open the door, we're going to shoot it open. So he come down and opened it up. And we started, and I told my guys, I said, okay, something's fishy here. I said, I don't know what. I said, why didn't open because every place else they opened up right away and stuff like that. And so the guys started in there, and they had to burn wood in these wood burner stoves and stuff like that. They cooked on a cook stove like that too. And they come out, and one of the guys come back and says, hey, Koetje, it's all set around here. Oh, I said, well, that went up in the chimney. I said, well, start pulling that old chimney out. I pulled that out. I said, somebody must have pulled it out before. And so, yep, and we found a 45 up in there. Then down in the stove, there was wads of paper in there, and they found 45 ammunition that he had stolen from the air base over there where he worked. So. And then we had one other problem over there after the war was Hitler Youth. You know, they start training those kids when they're 5, 6 years old for military duty and stuff like that. And they brainwashed them. And boy, when some of them 13, 14 years old, they were wicked. And they hated American soldiers, and I don't blame them. Because if they would have come over to my country, I'd have hated them too. So, but they hated us, and then they'd try to segregate one soldier out at a time if they could find one alone. And they'd attack him, beat him up. So then, that lasted a little while, because there for a while, I mean, we all carried live ammunition. And then there came an order through and said we had to turn in all our live ammunition. Okay, my guys come up. What are you going to do? Because what are you going to do? I said, well, you do just what I do. I said, I'll lay so many rounds on my bunk. I said, we'll have our bed made up. And I said, I'll lay mine down there. And I said, and you do the same thing. I said, if you got a clip rifle, I said, but we know where the dump is, where the ammunition dump. And I says, we'll go right straight over there and load up again. Mm-hmm. And so that went on for a little while, and all of a sudden one day, I was coming back from someplace, I don't know where it was, and the captain, he was walking alone, and some two kids, about 15 years old, attacked him. And there he sat without a, well, they had a 45, but all he could do was pistol whip him and stuff like that. And I heard somebody hollering help, and I had another guy with me, and one of my guys was with me, and I went up to the corner of the building, looked around, and I seen what was going on. So I dropped one of them, mm-hmm. and the other ones took off on a dead run. I wasn't going to waste my time shooting at him.
Right.
And then the old captain come up to me and he says, "Where'd you get that live ammunition?" I says, "I don't know, but you ain't getting it anymore." And he says, "That's it." He says, "We're going to carry live ammunition from now on out." I said, "You bet." I said, "Because this old guy's going home." I said, mm-hmm. And we'd run into that. And then one day there too, I mean, it was a nice summer day, and I was sitting in that old schoolhouse, and I thought, well, I'll walk up. It started right on a hill. And up the hill, there were little ways, a little village and stuff like that, where they had grape farms and stuff, and the terrace stuff. And so I went up there, and I started walking up there, and I walked alone, you know. And I knew better, but mm-hmm. You can tell the American soldier not to do it, and he's bound to do it anyway. And so I walked up there, and all of a sudden I seen some kids start sneaking around, and they was trying to corner me. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought, boy, I got to get out of here. I run down that hill. But I said, I got to watch, I said, where these guys are coming from, because if the corner get in front of me, I'm done filming. So I seen one, I spotted one ducking around there, and I clipped him in the butt. Mm-hmm. And I took off on a dead run down the hill, and I run into the barracks, just hollering to get an alert, come on, quick, get my men up there. And we went up there, rounded up 11 of them that day. Then we took them all in for interrogation and stuff like that. But then people wouldn't want to give them up at first, you know. And so we told them if they didn't start getting them out, surrendering those kids and hiding them, was going to burn the town down, the village down, you know. And they knew we'd do it too.
So even shooting one didn't necessarily stop them from continuing to do that sort of thing?
No, they was trained, just like American soldiers. Well, that's one thing they couldn't get into their head. You shoot one American soldier, another American soldier's right there taking over from there, and keep on going. They used to tell us that too after we captured different people. They said at Normandy, if we would have had American troops holding Normandy and the Germans attacked, he says, you never would have made it. Mm-hmm. But he says, German people were, well, stop, we'll take care of this and do this, you know. They had to be orders, have orders. He said, your guys didn't have to have orders to do anything. You just did it. So.
All right. So after these assorted adventures and so forth, at some point, they finally do let you go home, right?
Oh, yeah. They took and finally got us up, and then along in January, and they start packing us up and stuff like that. In February, we got on the boat, went down to Camp Lucky Strike in Marseille, France, up on the plateau. Sat there for about 20-some days before they got on the boat, and then we went down, got on the boat, and went home.
And what kind of boat did they have you on going back?
Philip Denis, an old grain boat.
Okay.
They hauled grain and wheat over in it. And they had these posts set up there, and they put these hammocks in. Mm-hmm. Boy, that was a mess. And yeah, the night, well, yeah, I think it was the day before or something, 2 days before, we was all packed and ready to go and stuff like that. And our officers didn't take us home. We had transportation officers come in. Mm-hmm. But they had a party. We had a big gymnasium on that school building. They had a big gym there, and they got some of the Army band in there, and they was having a party and stuff. And I went to bed. I didn't care for all that crap. I mean, I said, I don't want to get half pie-eyed and stuff. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the guys come storming in my room there. I'm right now in there. And, Koetje, come on, he says, the captain and and so-and-so's fighting. I can't remember the guy's name. And they was both pie-eyed. And so I pulled on my boots, didn't put on a shirt, I pulled on the pants, went over to the gymnasium. They was standing there swinging at each other. And so I walked right up between them. I said, "That's enough." And they stand there, looked at me, and the captain, he was going to take a swing, and I said, "Don't you dare." He looked at me again, so he didn't. And then I stood there, and I said, called a couple of my guys over there, and I said, "Here, take the guys from Nebraska." I'll tell you, and he was University of Nebraska lineman.
Oh.
In the football. He was a big old bruiser too, you know. And I know him. I mean, I fought with him and stuff like that. And I said, "Take him to his bunk." Then a couple of officers come out there, and I said, "You better take the captain to his quarters." And so they did. So the next day the captain called me in, and he says, "You don't talk to a captain like that." And I said, "I do if the captain's not acting as an officer in the United States Army." "Well, you didn't get away with that with me." And he says, "I'm going to put Nebraska under arrest, and you're going to have to guard him all the way home." Mm-hmm. And I said, "All right." That didn't bother me. I mean, because I wasn't going to guard him anyway. Right. And so I had to check out a carbine rifle and 3 rounds of ammunition. And then, so I did that, and we got on the train that next day and went into Marseille, France, mm-hmm. and stayed there for a while. And we found an ammunition dump, so we got a case of ammunition for a carbine. And the kids they go out in the fields, there's up in the mountains there, so they take that old carbine and shoot at anything around and stuff like that. And I can tell you a little about that too. So we sat there and for about 3 or 4 weeks, something like that, in Marseille, France. And we had to do our laundry because stuff was getting dirty and stuff like that. So I washed out my field jacket. And another guy did too, and we were sleeping in these tents. 8 men in a tent, wood sides and tent. And all of a sudden one guy come in, "Hey, Koetje, there goes your field jacket across the field there." I just reached under my bunk there, grabbed my carbine, and I run out. And a big old French Moroccan, he had taken 2 of our field jackets and was taken off with them. And I hollered, "Halt!" He didn't stop. I shot over him once, and he didn't stop. The next time he stopped. Mm-hmm. We went up there and got our jackets back. I hit him right in the butt. I knew I was going to hit him. I didn't aim for him to kill him. I aimed to hit him in the butt. And he was screaming and bloody murder. We didn't pay attention to him.
All right. Now, I think you had said that the actual trip back was not a very good trip.
No, it wasn't, because it was on that Philip Denis, and something went wrong with the propeller or something, the drive shaft or something in the ship, and we laid there floating and drifting. Anyway, the winds, and I knew how to read a compass, and most of my men did too, and they had that compass on the sort of promenade deck up there towards the front, and we'd run up there and see which way we was going and stuff like that. We'd drift in any way the wind blew us, So, but that was there was guys sick on that all the way home. Then we got off, and I told Nebraska, I said, "Here, you got in trouble. I didn't. You carry that stinking rifle." And there's roll calls, a couple officers stand there. And he said, "Yes," to his name, and they said, "Mine." I said, "Yep." They said, wait a minute. Which one of you is a prisoner? Which one of you is supposed to be guarding? I says, "He's the prisoner." "Well, how come he's carrying the rifle?" I says, "He got in trouble. I didn't." "Well, what if he runs away?" I says, "Look," I said, "I fought with this guy side by side." I said, "He's not going any place." Mm-hmm. I said, "I know him that well." Then the best part of it all was I got home and I didn't have any ammunition left. Mm-hmm. And I checked my rifle in and then stuff like that. And then they said, "Well, where's your 3 rounds of ammunition?" I said, "I haven't got it anymore." What happened to it? We shot it up. Oh, well, you owe me 35 cents a piece. I told him, go jump in the lake. I says, man alive, that stuff lays overseas, tons of it all over. I said, you want me to pay 35 cents for a couple rounds of ammunition? You're crazy. I never paid them either.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, did they discharge you pretty quickly then once you got
Right there, I went there, got off the boat, and then said we'd give us a steak. They'd fry us up a steak. Well, we assigned us to a barracks, and we went in there and got cleaned up and stuff like that. And then we could find a telephone. We'd call home if we wanted to, if we could. But their telephones and lines was a mile long by each telephone. Right. And so I cleaned up, and I finally went over and got my steak. And the next day they come by, and I finally got to a telephone that before I got on a train, and I went to Atterbury, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Got discharged there, gave me $3, kicked me in the butt, and said goodbye.
Oh, that's
$30. I mean $300.
Right.
Said goodbye.